Hello, everyone. My name is Yohji. Welcome to the very first podcast episode of the Brand Exchange brought to you by Dellve. We are here to help entrepreneurs and business owners, business leaders to create impactful brands with a clear purpose. Without further ado, I would like to introduce to everyone a true leader from the Philippines, even from Simon Sinek standards, Mr. Raymond Rufino. Raymond, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Yoji, for having me and for introducing me to podcasts. So this is a special event for me because it will be my first ever podcast. So thank you for having me.
Awesome. That would be the best opportunity to talk a little bit about branding. So before we start, I want to talk a little, just introduce you to our audience. So Raymond, you're the CEO of NEO for more than 15 years, which is absolutely, I've never seen anyone being in that such a position for such a long time. It's absolutely breathtaking. And your expertise is management, ownership, investment, and other like sectors within the real estate industry. NEO is one of the biggest commercial real estate companies in the Philippines. And you're also one of the country's greatest advocate for sustainability and responsible land use. Is that correct?
Yeah, thank you, Yoji.
Awesome.
That covers covers a lot. Yeah,
And
I think
also,
I think in terms of the being the head of Neo, I mean, I was very much involved with the organization for quite a long time. I wasn't CEO for all 15 years. I kind of
okay.
rose up a little bit through the ranks, but I was in senior leadership in the company since I joined in 2006, right? So it has been a
That's still
fantastic
impressive.
journey, yeah,
Yeah.
and really exciting with what we've done with the company and the ability to grow the company not only in terms of the typical, growth of business, but also in terms of trying to push our advocacy for green buildings and sustainability along the way.
Right. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. The last thing I wanted to mention is what I read yesterday about your 3 Ps, your motto about the industry or the future real estate industry: people, planet, profit.
Yeah, triple
I
bottom
really,
line. Yeah.
I really love reading that. Yeah, I guess with so many successful messages that you have communicated in the past 10 to 15 years, and so many kind of like also emotional like standards and key messages that NEO represents in the country and in the industry, you have truly built a meaningful brand. And my first question to you is, how has investing into your brand actually helped your business? Because you could have been just another real estate developer, but where was that change? Where, when you first time implemented all your true beliefs into your brand, how did that change your business?
Yeah. Well, I think early on when we started, we started with just one building in the Bonifacio Global City. And
Right.
as we continue to scale up from that first building and build more buildings, one of the things we realized was, we were a boutique developer, right? We were, one, two buildings, quite small compared to all of these other large public real estate companies that are also doing office buildings. And so I think branding for us really became important for differentiation. We had to get people to understand who we are, identify us, sort of in a very, very noisy field of so much competition
Right.
of names that have been there for a long time, right? So we had
Right.
to kind of, get into the conversation and really try to, showcase who we were and who we are. And so that was something we did early on. Both my father and his co-founder at that time were the ones really pushing and leading the company. And it's
Right.
actually our co-founder, Jacques Dupasquier, back at that time, who was really a big branding believer. I have to give him credit for really focusing us on investing in branding and doing a
Okay.
lot of work in terms of focusing on building a brand for the office buildings.
That's awesome. Yeah. Did you have any key event in mind that happened where you maybe displayed a lot of your own kind of brand elements that you really reached out to the communities? Because I know that NEO is very well known for the sustainability factor, but working with you guys in the past and reading a lot about what you guys do, I think the community factor might be even the second largest, maybe even the largest. Like, I'm not sure, but you have so many key events where you bring different people from different offices together, have contests and
Yes.
I guess community meetings, if you like to call it like that. How did these events impact the brand?
Yeah, well, so one of the things we realized is because we were small,
Yeah.
we had to do things a little bit differently from what everyone else was doing. And one of the things we focused on was exactly what you said. Can we try to build a community? Because we were starting off with a few buildings, a few tenants. We said, maybe we could start building a community as early as that at time, and the community could grow as we continue to grow and develop our buildings. And so it started off with, simple events like a sports fest. I'll never forget the early years. The sports fests were the most popular because, you know, health and fitness has always been a concern for a lot of people and a passion for a lot of employees. And yet, some companies are too small to be able to do that on their own. So we would organize these sports fests where tenants would send their teams and they would represent the tenant, and the tenant would give uniforms and provide a little bit of support, and they would play basketball or any other sport. I started off with basketball, but now we have like an entire slew of sports, right? But those
Right.
sports fests for me were the early sort of starts for the community. And I remember them fondly because it's not very often that you would get, competitors within an industry, let's say two big financial banks, compete together in friendly sport. And at the end
Right.
of the day, there's fierce competition, but then the camaraderie and the fun and the enjoyment of, being able to get together and compete was fantastic. So I really remember those early events.
That's awesome. Yeah. I think we always define difference between a brand and a business is when the business exceeds the original offering, meaning if it doesn't just offer the thing of what they doing in the industry, but like exceeds the status of that. So meaning you're a real estate company, but you're organizing sports fest. It has nothing to do with each other. But by going that step, you are actually not becoming a business anymore. You're creating a brand and therefore a community, a following that like people actually do care about, because normal people would not care about a basic real estate company, right? Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, that's absolutely amazing. I think that's the only way to really include people into your brand and make them followers and advocates of your company. So great job. Whoever came up with that community sports fest definitely deserves a pat on the back.
Thank you. Thank you. It's grown a lot since then, right? So now we have a whole program of activities which we call the hashtag the Neo Way. We missed the sports fest because the pandemic made it difficult for us to get together, but we have a
Oh yes.
complete online set of events and community activities now under this much expanded the Neo Way program. So we're continuing. I mean, we started way back then with sports fest, but now we're continuing to push, and hopefully we'll do more, especially this year as things start to open up.
Right. That's amazing. Yeah, maybe in 10 years we will talk again and we see the sport fest in the metaverse from present.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's very possible. Truly very possible.
Awesome. I think my next question is, so you have worked with us on your brand strategy maybe a year ago and really tried to revamp some of the core values and the positioning of your company to have even a clearer communication structure towards the external field, not just in the industry, but to the entire country. And I know we had a really great time working together on that. And I would like to know if you would have had the same knowledge that you had today, maybe 10 years ago when you just had one or two buildings. Is there something that you would have done differently?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think one of the big learnings for me was, we always did branding in-house, right?
Mhm.
All of the branding and marketing efforts was always our in-house team, the senior executives with our own people. We would brainstorm and we would work on it together. The experience of working with you and Jason and the Go Ahead team has been fantastic. And I think having a really strong group that is, objective, professional, experienced, handle a process for you that is not part of the company, right? You sit outside the company, so you're more sort of in a way objective and you can see things with a different viewpoint. I think that for me has been a big learning experience. Doing things on your own and trying to run your own process internally. I think you can make it work, you can manage, but I think the results of working with a solid group such as GoHan for me is the results you get are really worlds apart. And that was a big learning for me, realizing the value of working with groups such as yourself.
Awesome. Yeah, if I may sum up, so you suggest that you start internally, you get all your stuff together, you like make sure everyone is aligned and like everyone pulls on the same strings. And as soon as you hit that stage, you actually would be ready to contact an agency or another third party to basically work with you and have a completely subjective view of everything and then kind of
Correct.
take it to the next level. Is that correct?
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay. Okay. So we have introduced you last year to brand strategy, which I know at least in Asia is still a fairly new word, which most people can't really make a lot of fun with. And I wanted to ask you if you could enlighten your industry or your fellow colleagues a little bit, like how did brand strategy in just ignoring all the sales numbers, ignoring all the stuff that's going on the daily basis and just take a breath and talk 3 hours about yourself. How did that help you and your team? Because we had such a fun session with you.
Yeah, I think, one of the great things I discovered during that process was that the logos don't make a business, right?
Hmm.
And in a low way, the logo doesn't change the business either. But what is important is that you have a strong and clear way to identify your brand and allow people to relate to it. And so, I always thought the logo was just, hey, it has to look cool, it has to embody so much. But for me, what I realized during our process is that your brand just has to be clear, it has to be strong. People have to be able to identify it. People have to be able to relate your brand to. For example, in our way, the brands need to relate to our buildings, the brands need to relate to our community, but more importantly, it needs to relate to what the business believes in, what it aspires for, what it's trying to achieve, right? And I think that process has been really quite fantastic in trying to get that clarity of,
Yes.
you know, yeah, you can come up with a cool and fancy logo, but it's not going to get you very far unless you have a team that understands where you're trying to go, what you're trying to do, what you really believe in, and then delivers on that, right? So I think
Right.
I think that was for me in a nutshell the big learning experience where the logo and the collaterals, they're all in a supporting role, right? I mean,
Right.
like they could be the coolest, fanciest, glitziest stuff out there. But if you can't perform, if you can't deliver for your clients, your customers, your communities, your stakeholders, then it's just that. It's just really glitzy. It's glitzy stuff, right? But if
Absolutely.
if they support an organization that truly is alive, is working, on a very clear direction and it's delivery,
And
then I think it
consistent.
could be truly, truly powerful. Yes, consistency is so.
Yeah.
I hope that sounds about right.
Oh, no, that was perfect. Yeah, thank you so much for also mentioning the logo design. I think that's just such a hot topic still. I mean, we get so many inquiries every day of people wanting to change their logo, and I always ask them if Nike and Adidas switch their logo tomorrow, is it going to persuade you to buy one of the shoes more or less? It's like, no, that's not going to happen. But everything you said is just perfectly correct. And those are all just elements, and the entire thing needs to work together. Otherwise, you're just going to have a salad of different elements. And maybe you even confuse your audience even more with, yeah, a big investment into your branding. So, or your identity. Thank you so much for bringing that up. That was just perfect. All right. I think I just wanted to dip into a few challenges throughout your brand journey. And I wanted to ask you, within Neo, what was the biggest challenge building that brand?
I think, what was really important, I think, is getting that sort of clarity, right? Of, what exactly is your vision? What exactly is your mission? What exactly is your value set, right? It's such a basic sort of business plan, step one in your business plan, right? For any, entrepreneur starting out, okay, what's your vision? What's your mission? What's your value set, right? But for a company that, when we were talking, it was also what about 20-year-old company at that point. We were already an ongoing, fairly mature business, right? So it required us to reflect more deeply about who we are and more importantly, who we want to be, right? Because this was more about looking at our next 20 years, right? And looking at our next chapter and looking to the future. So I think that process of, working with a team internally, working with you guys externally, and trying to find that clarity and alignment around those very, very fundamental points of vision, mission, and value set was probably the biggest challenge.
Right.
Because it's not an easy conversation. It's not a simple conversation. There are so many viewpoints. There are so many perspectives. There are so many options. So
Right.
I think trying to get consensus around what all of that is, and then, you know, tweaking that, refining it, sort of distilling it down to
Oh yeah.
where we are today is really quite a challenge. And I think that was for me the biggest thing that we were able to accomplish was to just get that set up, right?
Yeah, I remember we had some digital war when distilling down the last few bits and pieces of the final values. We had big
Yeah.
conversations about agreeing on one final word that represents the entire company. It's usually one
Yeah.
of the hardest things to do. Yeah, I thank you again for bringing up the values and the mission vision, because I think what we also achieved successfully with you guys is that actually putting that not just on paper but putting that into the minds of people, so it doesn't just become a cool looking page in your guidelines or in your company information, but something that people can use in terms of strategizing their work. For example, a social media manager can take out the tone and the voice out of these missions and the vision and say, okay, what I just did today, does this reflect the mission of the company? Does this really stand for sustainable community growth and other things? Or does a PR manager or even HR, right? Like branding goes all the way to HR in terms of like, hey, can we take some of these bits and pieces and implement them into the words of our onboarding process? Like if we talk to someone very important and they don't care about the environment, it's like, look, there's no judgment here, but maybe you're not the greatest fit for us, right? Because we have a really strong belief in sustainability. So I think,
And all the time staying true to, again, my father was one of the founders of the company, and he's still very much actively involved in the company and staying true to his, sort of legacy in the business in terms of, what he also tried to instill in the company over the many years, the 20 plus years we've been in existence, right? So I think it was, looking to the future, but also still recognizing and appreciating our past, and especially sort of the vision and the spirit that my father had put into the company was also important.
oh yes, 100%. I can imagine that. All right. That was so great, Raymond. I have one last question for you, and it reflects a little bit on the conversation we had a bit earlier about how you start basically building the brand and which kind of like key moments were really important. And I want to make this as valuable as possible to maybe some of our young entrepreneurs, viewers who might be listening to this and see in the stage where you're really starting off, maybe at the point where you were about to build the first building, or maybe when it was just about to be done, and maybe reflecting a little bit to the time that we're living in today. What advice could you give young entrepreneurs, maybe startup founders, in terms of how to get started, what to keep in mind in terms of branding, what to do, what not to overdo? Yeah, if you have anything on your mind, I would love to hear that.
Sure. I think it's a very, very exciting yet challenging time for entrepreneurs, right? Especially the startups, right?
Yes.
Exciting because of the number of opportunities that are present in the market, the amount of capital. I don't know if you've read the recent report, but we're getting
Yes.
a phenomenal amount of capital now coming to the Philippines to help with our startup community. So a lot of our entrepreneurs are starting to get the resources that they need to really build and scale a lot of these companies, which are trying to solve many of the problems and gaps that we have in our
Right.
country. And there's so many of them, right? So that's the exciting part. The challenging part is, you know, we live in a world that is so full of volatility and uncertainty. Change is happening so fast because of technology. It's almost the footing you're on is always constantly changing, right?
Yes.
So you want to, you know, be take advantage of the opportunities, but you want to be nimble enough and agile enough to navigate this ever changing environment. It's not easy, right? So
No.
my simple advice is what I find is the core of most companies, and we spoke about this earlier, is that vision, mission, value set, right? I mean, your interim strategy, your tactical moves, your organizational chart may change, right? But the vision and the mission of your organization, I think, should be so core to who you are as a company and what you're aspiring for, that should be constant, right? Uh,
Right.
your business model may even change, right? But it must and should stay true to that vision and mission. And that's where I think a lot of the entrepreneurs need to spend more time in deep reflection about what is it really that is the higher purpose? What is the why of this company, of your organization, right? We've
Yeah.
heard this so many times, right? Famous people always say, start with the why, think about the why. But really, it sounds so basic, but so many people miss it. So many
Oh,
people
yes.
miss it and sort of skip along and figure out the why later. And I think that's so important. If you can get your vision and your mission kind of set up so that it's clear to everyone in your organization and also to your potential customers, clients, and partners, what you are trying to achieve, what's the purpose of your organization, then that I think will be something you can carry with you and it will help you grow and scale and attract the best talent and the best partners and secure the best customers. The values also is something so critical. That's probably the third piece because
Mhm.
I am such a believer that values are so important. And so many companies, so many entrepreneurs fail to define the kind of values that are important to them. And why are values important? Because every major decision for your company and that your employees will make as part of your company should be driven and supported by what we agree are the values of the company, right? Without the values, people make decisions based on their own personal values or their own experience or their own, kind of knee-jerk reaction, right? But when you have a clear value set, and we're still a work in progress with Neo, right? We have our six values and we're still trying to work through this
It's a never ending
and try to
story.
embed it. Yeah. But I think if you have that to rely on, the way like I tell all of my staff and all of the employees in the company, when you find yourself in a difficult moment, questioning what is the right decision, go read our values.
Mhm.
Go read the list of values, what they stand for, what we believe in. And very often the decision becomes much clearer, right? Because you know that the values will inform the right decision that you should be making. So I would leave that as my sort of a little bit of advice to all the entrepreneurs out there who are listening.
That's awesome. Thank you so, so much. I hope we at least change the life of one entrepreneur out there and maybe to not look at mission, vision, value, and other positioning statements as some fancy thing to have, but a thing to properly use instead. Yeah, I think with that, there were definitely some value bombs in there, Raymond. I think for our very first episode and our very first brand exchange, we will leave it by that. And hopefully we will meet again. Hopefully we have reached at least one person that will already make me happy. And yeah,
Great. Well, thanks again for having me, Yohji. This has been a great experience. My very first podcast. I'm going to remember this well. And thank you. It was wonderful to share a little bit of our journey. And then again, I am by no means an expert or guru in any of this. I'm on a journey just like the rest of us, trying to do our best to learn and adjust and cope and grow just like everyone here. And so it's a journey we're all taking together. And if Yohji and I were able to help any of you, then we're both going to be very happy and proud to be able to do that.
thank you again. It was great learning about the story of Neo and from you, Raymond. Again, we will see you in the future and stay safe and have a great year of 2022.
Thanks so much, Yohji. All the best.
Bye.